Hello, I'm Reverend Scott Wipperman, pastor here at First Presbyterian Church in Helena, Montana, and we welcome you to our worship service today. I'd like you to know that regardless of who you are or where you are in your journey of faith, you're welcome here at First Presbyterian Church. Our gospel reading today comes from the Gospel of Luke, the 11th chapter. Then the Lord said to him, "Now then, you Pharisees, clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside you are full of greed and wickedness. You foolish people, did not the one who made the outside make the inside also? But give what is inside the dish to the poor, and everything will be clean for you. Woe to you, Pharisees, because you give God a tenth of your mint, rue, and all kinds of garden herbs, but you neglect justice and the love of God. You should have practiced the latter without leaving the former undone." And another word from the prophets in the Old Testament, from Micah 6. "Hear, O mountains, the Lord's accusation. Listen, you everlasting foundations of the earth. For the Lord has a case against his people. He is lodging charge against Israel. My people, what have I done to you? How have I burdened you? Answer me. I brought you up out of Egypt and redeemed you from the land of slavery. I sent Moses to lead you, and also Aaron and Miriam. My people, remember what Balak king of Moab counseled and what Balaam son of Beor answered. Remember your journey from Shittim to Gilgal, that you may know the righteous acts of the Lord. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow down before exalted God? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000 rivers of oil? Shall I offer my firstborn for my transgressions, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has showed you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." Hunger was the theme of the PW gathering this weekend. Part of the Isaiah reading was the focus for their text this weekend. And they may have heard these statistics, but let me share a few with you just in case you're not quite familiar with this. Hunger is a worldwide problem, but looking here in America, it is a problem as well, even in this land of plenty. 13% of American households experience food insecurity. That's roughly 1 out of 6 households in America. Another 5% of households in America are near that line of food insecurity. So what is food insecurity? And the U.S. Department of Agriculture defines it as limited or uncertain availability of nutritionally adequate and safe foods. It means you don't have enough calories and you don't have enough nutrients to meet your needs. At least part of the time, maybe much of the time. And this leads to poor development, particularly with children. If they don't have the nutritional building blocks to form their bodies, the body will get built, but the structure won't be as strong. So who are these hungry people? Many of the pundits that we see on TV might suggest that these are lazy people. And these are people who don't work. And in fact, that's true. Many of these people are people who don't work. 15% of the people who receive SNAP benefits, that's food stamps, are retired people. They don't work, right? Another 20% are disabled people. And out of those 15.8 million families in America, that get food stamps. Let me get my statistics straight here. 29.1 million of them are adults. 13.1 million are children that receive that. It is said that 32% of the people who receive food stamps do work. Last year, 100 million of SNAP benefits went to military families living on base. Hunger is a wide problem amongst all sorts of people. 2 years ago, Walmart got in the news in not such a great way because they were urging their employees to apply for food stamps, essentially acknowledging that what they were earning was not a living wage. So hunger is a pervasive problem here in America as well as in other places. Every county in America has people who are in food insecurity. Even the wealthiest county in America, in Virginia, Bloudoun, has 4% of people who are in food insecurity. In Jefferson County in Mississippi, 32% of the people, virtually a third of the people there, are in food insecurity. So this is a pervasive problem here and across the world. Now, not every poor person is hungry, but it is pretty clear that every hungry person is probably poor. And they can't find ways to meet their nutritional and their caloric requirements for good living. The Archbishop of Brazil, Dom Harold Câmara, has this quote. He says that when I feed the hungry, people call me a saint. And when I ask why they're hungry, they call me a communist. So we know who is hungry, but why are they hungry? We're told that there's enough food on this earth to feed everybody. Sometimes there's a problem with geographic distribution. Sometimes, like due to climate change and the strange weather patterns that is coming about, bringing around more droughts and more floods, some areas may have trouble producing the crops needed locally for people. And while it might be possible to get grains and other things that store well to those people, getting them produce and fruits is a greater challenge. But if you listen to the experts, most of them will agree that the biggest cause of hunger is social injustice. And this is what the Archbishop was alluding to when he made his quote. So why do people put you down when you ask the question, why are people hungry? Why do they call you a communist or something else when you talk about this? It's an issue of social justice. What is social justice? And maybe the best way to define this is, what is social injustice? And social injustice is when one group of people profit, either monetarily or in the broader sense of the term, at the expense of another group of people. And so social justice would be one where all people are treated equally, where no one is benefiting at the expense of someone else. And who says anything about social justice? Because if you're the ones who are benefiting from social injustice, you probably don't want it to be pointed out that you're benefiting from others' expense. You probably don't like it talked about because it might actually change the system. and then you wouldn't be privileged and benefit anymore. You're probably not overly enthusiastic about an even playing field, having grown up in an era maybe where you were on the upper end of the playing field. But what does the Bible say about this? Well, in today's readings, we heard several things about this. If you spend yourselves on behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of those oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness, and your night will become like noonday. In Micah, he has showed you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? It's simple. To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. And in Luke, woe to you, Pharisees, because you give God 1/10 of your mint and your rue and all other kinds of garden herbs, but you neglect justice and the love of God. Justice, if you look it up, is mentioned 132 different verses in the Bible. If you add righteousness to that, and quite often righteousness is a synonym for justice, or, righteousness is being in the right relationship with God and being right in relationship with God's will, with His justice. If you add those two together, 598, I don't want to exaggerate here, times those verses that comes up in the Bible. This is a recurring theme throughout the Bible. It is something that we're called to. We're called to social justice. The Presbyterian Church of the USA has 6 great ends of the church. And the 5th of those 6 ends is the promotion of social righteousness. And they go along with that, they quote Amos 5:24. But let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. This is not something new that the PCUSA just established and put in place. This came about in 1910, is when they had established these 6 ends of the church. And even back then, they said the promotion of social justice is part of the life of this church, part of the life of us as Christians. It's interesting. If you look at the Old Testament and the prophets, and if you look at when they wrote their books, they aren't kind of spread out evenly throughout the history of the Old Testament. They come in clumps. And as archaeologists dig through the layers in Israel and uncover things and learn about various eras in that, they find that there are times where there was greater income and wealth equality, and at times where there was greater income and wealth disparity, inequality. And guess when the prophets showed up? At the times of greater wealth and income inequality. And they spoke about it in sometimes not very friendly terms to the people they were speaking to. But Zechariah says that this is what the Lord Almighty says: administer true justice, show mercy and compassion to one another. We are to work to promote social justice. And if we work for this, we can alleviate some things like the hunger that exists in this world. We can feed the hungry. But let us also work on why the hungry are hungry. Let us work on putting justice into place that all may have the nutritional substance that they need. There's a Pete Seeger song that I first heard from Peter, Paul, and Mary. If I had a hammer. If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning. I'd hammer in the evening. I'd hammer all over this land. That's how the song starts, right? But that song ends with, well, I've got a hammer, and I've got a bell, and I've got a song to sing all over this land. It's the hammer of justice. It's the bell of freedom and the song about love between my brothers and my sisters all over this land. This is a calling that we have. We have this hammer. God has given it to us, right? We know what justice is. We can bring about just situations. It's what Christ calls for. It's what the prophets tell us to do. So, in the area of the injustice of hunger, we can do things, and we are doing those. We can do more of them. We can give food to help alleviate the immediate hunger to those who are hungry. We can do that locally, which we do when we bring things to the food bank and hand them out here. Through the church, we give things to God's love, where they feed people and house them that are homeless and are short of food. There's many activities across this presbytery that we do to help stock food banks and to get food into the hands of people that need it. The 1 in 6 who are in food insecurity and don't always have enough to eat. But we can also take a look and what can we do individually and what can we do as a community of faith to help bring about social justice such that all will have food, to remove those systems of injustice that keep food away from others, from some, to help knock down walls that separate us from one from another. This is what the prophets and Christ are calling us to do. Be just. Bring about justice. And with that, we can help people who are hungry fill that hunger.